From a famous racing family, Sam Kavanagh was always destined for a career as a trainer. He's the son of Mark, who famously trained out of Adelaide and Melbourne, winner after winner. What about these horses? Who Begot You, Maldivian, the 2009 Melbourne Cup winner. Shocking. Sam branched out on his own and met with immediate success. His star was born, but then disaster struck. He was suspended for 9 years for Cobalt. It was reduced to a 5-year ban on suspension. He got his feet back under him, began training in Newcastle again, and the winners came, but then a shocking cancer diagnosis, and he's battling with that now. At only 37 years of age, he's seen a lot in his young life, and he's our special guest on The Heart of Racing. Sam Kavanagh, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You've crammed a lot in 37 years.
Yeah, I don't recommend the way I went about it to everybody, but yeah, I don't do things by halves, I guess. So yeah, no, look, I've been very driven from a young age, and you know, I pushed very hard, very young. I was always going to train horses, and you know, spent time on the studs, went overseas, travelled with horses, and then obviously, you know, it all come crashing down, but. You know, we'll get into that.
And we'll get into that. You know those years when Mark, your father, was training those horses. We mentioned them earlier, Maldivian, Who Begot You, shocking, winning a Melbourne Cup. How involved were you in those years as a young man?
Yeah, so my dad's story starts a lot earlier than that. He was a jumps jockey and started in Mount Gambier, and then moved to Adelaide and built from there. And so we moved to Adelaide. I was in high school, and I went to Widdenstart, I think 2003, 2004 maybe. And then
to work there?
Work there, did a year. I've always been of the opinion that a good trainer needs to buy a good horse, and you need to be able to understand young horses and know them. And that, to be fair to my dad, he's bought all of his good horses, and not expensively. Like, he hasn't had a lot of them just sent to him. So, you know, his story started buying horses from Mill Park at the Adelaide sales, and off another breeder called Henry Vogel. He went through, basically, I remember one year going through, working out the stats on who the best breeders in South Australia were, and there was 3 he came up with, and he just went and pretty much bought all their drafts. And that was how he got Hard to Get. And then undoubtedly, that was one of the first Cropper Reduced choices. He won a Blue Diamond. And these are horses on a budget of, like, the 2 most expensive horses he'd bought in 10, 12 years of training was Maldivian and obviously bought from Cambridge, and undoubtedly from Mill Park. And that's how he got himself going. So always of the opinion that you needed to know what a horse looks like from scratch. So
you went to Widden to find out yourself what a horse looked like from scratch.
So I got to spend some time on the stallions, on the broodmares, yearling prep, did the dog watch for the afternoons, foaling down. And you watch horses grow and change. I mean, in the yearling prep that we did for Easter, All Silent was in there. It was a good horse.
Yeah, good horse.
Pasicatira, I think. And there was, I'm trying to think, there was a couple of really good horses there, but definitely I remember All Silent clearly.
He was good down the straight, All Silent.
Yeah.
He was quick.
I remember him clearly because we all loved him, and he passed in, and Graham Begg's old man bought him and sent him to Hong Kong, and he was a failure. And then Graham bought him back to Australia and owned him himself, and was a great horse. And he said, I want to organise you to go overseas. He said, I think young people like yourself should be on the Flying Start, but I wasn't a university graduate, which is what they were looking for. He organised me a stint with Peter Chappell-Heim, who'd just come back from Hong Kong. And so I was his pupil for a year, which was amazing. And yeah, we had great horses, authorised, Dutch Art, authorised won the English Derby, Dutch Art. I'm trying to think what else was there. Tarek was a Group 2 winner. Yeah, amazing year there. And Peter taught me a lot because obviously growing up in a stable as a stable hand as a kid, you're just the boss's son, so you get flogged by the foreman and all that sort of thing. But going over to
take yourself away from the family situation.
Yeah. And going over to England, I started off doing boxes, first to work, last to leave. I'd get in and do my boxes early, and then Peter lost his driver's license for drink driving, which worked out great for me. So I started driving him up the gallops, and he was a gifted horse person. He was he's come out in the Racing Post and talked about he had his battles and couldn't really handle big numbers, but when he was on, he was a freak, and I learned a lot from him. And so that's when I first started really watching gallops and started learning how to watch horses themselves. So the English gallops are very different to Australia. In Australia, we sit in a tower and watch them from afar and clock them and so on. In England, Peter used to get up really close to them. He wanted them to come past at their top. He wanted to listen to their wind, listen to the rhythm of their gallop. It was all about sounds and how they moved. And he just taught me a lot. And that was a really important year to me.
So after you went from Europe, you obviously came back and worked with your father again. And then sort of tell us how that period of time went and how you transitioned into training on your own.
Yeah, so I was going to go to America, and then my parents come over for Ascot that year, and Dad said, look, I think I'm going to open a Melbourne stable from Adelaide. That stage, he had young horses that weren't top level, but Divine Madonna had won a listed race, I think, in Adelaide. Maldavian had won a winter handicap, which he thought was and he was saying, he hadn't started yet. He was turning 4, but he thought he was quite good. And he said, now's the time, I'm going to move. You should come back and run Adelaide. So I did that. I was 21. Moved back around the Adelaide stable. And then after a year, we were the first stable to beat Hayes in, I think, 30-something years.
Wow.
We won 3 premierships there.
That would have been seismic in South Australia at the time that
huge,
the Hayes stable got knocked over.
Yeah, it was huge at the time. Yeah. So we were sort of training 50 winners a year in town, one a week. There's only the Metro Saturdays over there.
Yeah.
Had a good team, but I was young, green, but had staff that had been in the stable 10 years.
Which helps.
And it makes a big difference. And Dad and I used
What
to
years
clash.
were they? When are we talking about? The early 2000s or something?
Yeah, no, I ran it from, I think I ran 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then I left in 2012.
Yeah, and so your dad's over in Melbourne at that point. Shocking wins the Melbourne Cup during that period.
That was 2009, was it, I think?
Yep.
2009.
He was 2009. So the year I got back, we had Maldavian, Divine Madonna, Devil Moon. She started off in Adelaide, ran 3rd in the Oaks, and then she come to Melbourne, and Dad had her, and she won the Turnbull the following spring. She was a good mare. Who Begot You, he was just one of those horses, just better than him. It's just when you get horses like that.
He was great.
Yeah, he was scary good. Funny enough, I remember that spring, we were all talking up Shocking, and he went to Sale and got beaten a maiden, then went to Kilmore and got beaten a maiden, and we were all sitting there going, oh, we thought he was the one. Then next prep he came back. He had issues with his airway, and they changed things with him. He had equine asthma, and then he come back the following year, and I took him to Queensland for Dad for the Derby. So he won. I think he won 3 in a row in Melbourne. Then he flew up to Queensland, and I had him for a week up there, and he ran 2nd in the Derby and was really unlucky.
Yeah.
And then he come back, and obviously
he wins the Melbourne Cup.
Won the Melbourne Cup. We didn't know we were in until the Saturday when he won the Lexus.
He did the Saturday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Double. It's rare these days. So when that ends, you come to Sydney. What year did you go out on your own in and around the Sydney area?
Yes. So no, I went out on my own in Adelaide. Didn't have the horses to go to Sydney. Started with 10 horses in Adelaide. I bought a filly for some friends called Elysian Thunder, and I sort of had her in Adelaide and trained her through to the Gold Coast Magic Millions, where she ran 3rd.
Yeah.
And then, it actually just sort of happened. I didn't plan to go out on my own. Dad and I just had a proper argument one day, and he said, go out and look at the name on the gate. I'm the boss, and if you don't like it, get out. I said, okay, I'll give you 3 weeks' notice.
What were the clashing points? Like what were the...
Because Will's from a robust family himself.
I'm still in prison.
Well, you went back.
Yeah.
You got out and went back.
I know.
Look, I think with horses, there's no set rules. So two opinions and you clash. And, I was often of the opinion that I was on the ground in Adelaide looking at the horse and he would try and override things from Melbourne. And I think any father and son clash. But to be fair, it was probably healthier for the business, us clashing and then meeting on middle ground because, we were airborne back then. And
absolutely airborne.
Yeah. And, I started again, obviously, with 10 horses and their results sort of, the Adelaide stable was closed within 12 months of me leaving and then they focused on Melbourne. So their thing sort of changed up pretty quickly after I'd left as well.
Did you feel maybe you didn't get enough credit for the work you were doing at the time?
That was always part of it, yeah. Look, there was times I'd
Were you cocky? Were you pretty cocky yourself?
I was young. I don't think I was cocky, but I was young.
And
driven, but you're working under someone else's name too. So you and I think that used to drive Dad a bit mad because I was all care and doing my 80 hours a week, but really when things went wrong, there was no responsibility. Like you think you have it and it hurts you and all that, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with the
Bjorn
boss.
told me when I went out on my own, he said, you can be an assistant all you want, but when you start training on your own, you'll F up, there's nothing really prepares you for being the goal.
Well, they weren't copying the work from Melbourne. Now we're doing it different in Adelaide. And that was a real positive for me. But I look back now, that's what made me be able to train. I made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. But I had 40 horses that were probably well-bred and better horses than Adelaide horses because they were his offcuts from Melbourne. Yeah. So he didn't want to be taking him to Bendigo for a Monday meeting or a Tuesday meeting. He said those owners are better off winning on Saturday at Morphettville. So when he had syndicators and all that, he said they'd rather win on a Saturday at Morphettville in a benchmark 68 than win in a benchmark 68 at Kilmore and Mornington.
For sure.
And in the end, good horses, even though they may not be great horses in Melbourne, but good horses in whichever jurisdiction you are will coat over a lot of cracks.
100%. But Adelaide was one of those places too. You and I have talked about it many times. Training facilities are an issue Australia-wide. Morphettville's a good training track. And at the end of the day, you got a pool, you got a water walker, and it's quiet. So those fillies that wouldn't handle the 3K walk out into the middle of Flemington, well, they were walking out of their box, getting a saddle on in the tie-ups, having a little bit of ace and doing a lap around Morphettville, and they'd put on weight and do well. Do you know what I mean? And every year you see, whether it be Richard Jolly or Will Clarkin or Leon McDonald, and now Andrew Lewis obviously taking over, the top 10% of the Adelaide horses come to Melbourne in the carnival and they win. They do really well, and they always have. There's always been good horses come out of Adelaide, but it is a good training facility. And so I was lucky enough to have nice horses and continuous horses coming through, and I learned a lot through that period. Made a lot of mistakes, but learned.
So you've done your learning, you've done the big apprenticeship, you're clashing with your dad, you go out on your own and you land here. Where did you first land in the round? When I say here, this is a national podcast. When I say here, I talk about Sydney.
Okay, so I started in Adelaide in February. I had a horse called Bagman, a horse called Elysian Thunder, and a couple of other horses that were no good. Bagman he'd come... I'd looked after him in the Adelaide stable, so they moved him across with me. A good friend of mine, God bless him, Brad O'Hare. He died of pancreas cancer, and I miss him all the time. He was a really big supporter, and he bought me. He was an agent up here. He bought me another horse called Cape Clear that won 5, and so I basically spent a year and a half in Adelaide to have enough horses to come to Sydney. So I went out and bought yearlings, and I went to Europe and bought Midsummer Sun. who ended up being quite a good horse for us. And then I bought Tales of Grimm from Europe as well. So we moved here in August 2013 after a year and a half in Adelaide, and basically turned up here in August 1.
Here being Rose Hill. Yeah.
20 boxes. I remember I had a good friend with me, Alan Thompson. We drove from Adelaide through and bought a heap of gear up. We drove through Scone to have a look at my mare, and at the time she was covered by I'm Invincible for no money. That ended up helping. And I remember we were driving down Pennant Hills Road, and you sort of see over the city, and my heart just dropped. I thought, what am I doing? And he looked across at me and he said, "You all right?" And it was just daunting. I turned up at Rose Hill, and I was stables under Gerald Ryan's originally.
Yeah.
I think that's where you were.
Yeah, we started there as well. Annabelle's there now.
Yeah, so started with 15. First 2 weeks I was there, I had one horse ready to go, set up to win, and she won my first runner at Warwick Farm, Words of Weapons, owned by a great friend of mine, Duncan Grimley and Gary Charney. And then started to build from there. So Jerry sent me a horse called Absalon. He won at Randwick and then won the Recognition Stakes in Brisbane. Midsummer Sun ran second on the Melbourne Cup Day in 1800 that season and should have won, and then won the Gosford Cup. And then I had a 3-year-old filly called Interspersed, which I bought at an Easter sale. She won the Canberra Guineas and ran in the Oaks the following year in 2014. She ran 5th in the Oaks. And I had a small team, but like I said, I'd always been able to buy horses. So we'd had a small select team that basically we had runners straight away in stakes races, and it was starting to make an impact. Staffing was always hard though.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's changed, mind you. I think staffing's
difficult across the nation and all sorts,
in all industries,
particularly horse racing. But Sam, they were kind of heady times. I can't remember if it was about 18 months worth. I remember one summer. I remember, on Sunday there'd be the race. There still are the racing shows on Sky and everything the next day, and the trainer who's had a couple of winners. And I remember seeing you that on there a couple of times, and your kind of star was born at that time. Like you really were the talk of the town. People were saying this young guy's got something.
Didn't feel like it from where I was sitting though.
Yeah.
So what people don't understand is financially it was tough. Like Kelly and I were living above our stables with a 2-year-old kid in a 1-bedroom unit that most people use as an office. I paid $160,000 rent in a year at Rose Hill. Most people would pay
for 20 boxes.
20 boxes. And, I had sales companies, buying horses. Like I was under pressure. I remember I went through a stage.
You're buying horses, you've got to fill the ownership out of those horses.
Yeah. So you've got to chase the money of the owners and
Magic Millions lets you put it on the chit for like 90 days or something, then they start charging you interest.
1.5%. But the other thing is too, what people don't realise is, everybody says to you, I'll send you a horse to help you get going. But they then want to see you get going, and then they'll send you a horse. But how do you get going, right? Yeah. So all those horses I bought, those horses in Europe, I went and bought them myself. I flew over, because I thought, well, what's the point in me sending an agent over? I've got a budget of 70,000 sterling. So Midsummer Sun, that actually one of the trainers in Sydney rang my clients and said, my agent said that's no good and it fails all the vetting. I rang him up personally and said, just wondering why you're ringing my clients, telling him that, because I went there, I vetted the horse myself and it's fine. And he was very, very sheepish. Cutthroat. I thought Sydney, they eat their own children, it's ruthless. So it was one of those things, like I said, I bought my own horses, I went in hard, but people didn't see from the other side that it was
And
relentless.
you do it when you start, you're doing all the work yourself. You don't have staff because you can't afford them.
Yeah, like stable foreman and all that sort of stuff.
You got to remember that for a young trainer, because it's an invoicing system, you give people they have their 30 days worth of training, then you give them 30 days to pay their bill.
And some of them pay it 60 and 90.
Yeah, so you've got to have 3 months worth of capital to get through that initial period.
I when I started in Adelaide, I didn't plan it. I just had a blue with Dad, and I was just like,
I'll train on my own.
I'll do it on my own. I'll be right. The 12 horses, and I had, I think, 25,000 in my account that I think I'd won on a treble a couple of weeks before. Like, you know, it was just...
So
that's what it was.
Crazy. So in essence, you're under huge pressure for the first couple of years.
I tell you what happened, actually. So I only trained 2 Metro winners in my first year there, right?
One being your first starter.
Yeah, and then Absalom won at Randwick, right? And I'd trained for about 4 or 5 placings in stakes races. But we'd won a Gosford Cup and Canberra Guineas in the provincials. But as you know, you win a Sunday Cup.
Not
you and I think
notice.
No one notices. Yeah. So we're 2 Metro winners. And then Chad Lever retired and went back to Adelaide, and he had a split up with his girlfriend who also worked for me, who was a great rider. And all of a sudden I went from having 3 riders to none through a middle of a winter. And then I had a girl come and work for me who knew everything, and then started changing the work. And I'm in the stables doing boxes, as was Kelly. And
with the 2-year-old upstairs.
With a 2-year-old upstairs. I mean, look, as you know, we're working with your partner. Like Kelly and I have always worked together, but it's you got a 2-year-old kid and you're spending 50 hours in the stables together, plus you're living and working together. Like it's tough. And anyway, I had a couple of bad rides and things not going my way. And I remember talking to a jockey manager who's a very close friend of mine now. And I blew up about his jockey. And he said, well, maybe you're the problem. You're 2 from your last 50. And I went, I am 2 from my last 50. I've got no staff. And I just lost my mind. I rang up Chad in Adelaide. I said, Chad, you need to get your shit together. I'm sorry, I can't
You're
swear.
right, you can.
And he come back. And then I got another rider who was very good, a French lad. And all of a sudden, all of my horses had come back in. I'd missed the spring, and it was like everything was going to come through the summer. And I had 4 riders again, 28 horses. And then, so this was sort of August. All of a sudden, October comes around, and they're all just starting to come right. And then I ended up with, Centre Pivot. He won, I think, 5.
Yeah.
Tales of Grim won a Scone Cup, won 3. But all the young horses...
That's that summer I was talking about.
But see, all the young horses that left me after I got rubbed out, which, everyone said, oh, well, they've all been blown apart on drugs, which was completely false. The horses that I'd purchased, I bought I'm the Lady for 80,000. She won a Magic Millions for Joe Pride. I bought Invincible for 110,000, and he ended up winning 500 for Chris Waller and winning about 7 in town. Ran second in a winter handicap and, those races through the winter. Embley went to Bjorn Baker.
Yeah.
He ran second in a Craven Plate, won 6 in town. I'm trying to think. Louboutin I bought for 250 grand. She won a Group 2 for Bjorn. Went through the sales and made $750,000 for the Gillards. Like the horses that I had actually purchased as yearlings, and I was only buying 10. And like Will and I often talk about this. I mean, you look through at the moment this age of the super stables, and you look at the slipper noms, and Annabelle's got 110, and Kieran Marr's got 150, and Gay's got 104.
Yeah, that's
I was buying 10.
That's how many yearlings they're buying.
Yeah, and I was buying 10. And
it'd blow people away if they knew. So Kieran Marr can have 140 horses nominated for the slipper.
150, I think it was, for last year.
That's
Gay like 110,
excluding,
120.
That's excluding the ones that they don't nominate as well.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. So Sam,
and this isn't a negative to them, but I mean, I was buying 10 horses and got. I think of the 10 yearlings I got that year, none of them won at 2. A few of them won at 3, but by the time they were 5, by the time they were 5, I think 5 of them had been Metropolitan Sydney winners, which is 50%. It was just ridiculous. So Zestful was another filly. She ended up winning a Group 2 for Chris Lees. She won her maiden and then had an issue, and I convinced them not to. I said, make sure you rehab her. Do not bloody retire at a stud. She went to Chris Lees and won a Group 2. So I had a stable full of young horses about to explode, but from where I was sitting, I'm living above a stable. I had great staff at the time, but I was probably hard on them because I was under pressure.
So when we were going through, was it 2015?
Yeah.
That was the year that the event happened. We hear a lot about what happened in terms of what...
This is the Cobalt suspension.
Yeah.
And it was the buzzword in horse racing at the time was this Cobalt. No one really knew what it did. And you got 9 years.
Yep. So I didn't know I was using Cobalt.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know.
No, but Darren Smith had already been charged at that stage. no one in their right mind was using any cobalt. We didn't know we were using cobalt. That is fact, right?
And where was the cobalt from? Was it in feed or supplements?
No, it was drips. We were just giving vitamin drips.
Yeah.
So now they've realised that B12 was lifting cobalt.
Yeah.
Right. And we were giving vitamin drips twice a week with VAM, with vitamin C, with ferrosil, and with a vitamin complex supplied by vet. Now, that lifted our cobalt levels. They still haven't told us whether it was cobalt chloride or whether it was lifted from the B12. They never actually ran those tests. Once you had a cobalt positive, it was the buzzword. I was small enough to be attacked.
But you're also a high-profile small
high
stable.
enough profile, but it didn't make a dent in Sydney racing, really,
Right.
because I only had 40 horses on the books. You know? I mean, look, when we did our cobalt investigation, my lawyer asked the question to how many cobalt positives has there, and he went through the percentages, and he said, hang on, we're getting prosecuted for one, and you're saying there's a significant number of other ones, and it just got shut down immediately.
Because it all went away, the whole cobalt thing.
Yeah, I would say there was other readings probably before the January cut-off. I'd say there was probably others that it was just too hard to prosecute.
So your world's rocked. You get 9 years. It's reduced to 5.
Would have got probably reduced further, but I had to go through a process that was just ridiculous.
You wouldn't have had any money left.
Cost me $250.
250,000.
Broke me. Yep. And I just kept going.
And how have you rebuilt? How have you got back into it?
I haven't really yet financially. I mean, it was hard on Kelly, hard on us. I mean, like I said, when you get rubbed out. So
is there still just the one kid, or?
Yeah, one. Yep. Yeah. Sienna. Yep. So it was hard. I mean, I don't say poor me. I put myself in that position. It was a different era then, though. I mean, since my era, I was a young person that was aggressive. I still say to this day, had no idea I was using cobalt, but I did treat horses as a bleeder. And I said that to the stewards. I said, look, I've treated horses as a bleeder. I've done the race day treatment. I'm not guilty of nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm not guilty of this. And they said, right, well, you're guilty of that, so then you're guilty of that. And that's how it played. And there's no point in me going, there's no point in me sitting here for half an hour telling the story about how I was hard done by. At the end of the day, I put myself in a position where they could nail me. They nailed me to the wall. What do? So you drive on and you put it down to character building.
And when you look now, and even post, there would have been times when you were out of the game and you saw other trainers get high ratings of I think
well, Ron Quinton
in feed.
Michael Freedman had one recently, and I think he just got a fine.
Yeah. How does that sit with you, seeing them and being like, well, does that feel like a harshly done by situation for you?
Yeah, but I mean, I lost my family over it. I lost everything. Like I don't talk to my parents and things like that either.
You don't talk to your mum and dad?
No, Dad and I haven't spoken since the incident at the Lord Dudley Hotel. At the end of the day, my mum was very solid with my dad and refused to have a conversation with me about anything that had happened and refused to believe anything that had happened. And I remember going to the sale. I can't remember whether it was a sale or whether I remember seeing Julia Ritchie, who's a prominent figure in the industry. And she walked up to me and she said, I know you're having family trouble. She said, just remember one thing, that it's very, very important. No matter how much you dislike your father, your daughter is Switzerland. And that has to be the way it goes. And I remember it true. And I actually said that to my parents. I said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. But Sienna is Switzerland. And they didn't make any effort for Sienna, so I haven't made any effort to try and fix it with them. And that's where I'm at. Not to get into family stuff on a podcast, but that's
tough.
And that's where it's at. So I still talk to Levi, and he makes an effort. He calls me, I call him. My family is obviously Kelly and my daughter, and we've out of things that happen. Things happen for a reason, right? So like I say, I put myself in a position where that could happen to me, but I had people reach out that were friends that have become great friends. We went and lived on a farm in Scone with Ken and Sharon Wells, who have been amazing to us and been like a grandparent to Sienna, and just, a couple of, Duncan Grimley's been a mentor all the way through. He's been a very, very solid supporter, and, you know, I've got a group around me of people that have been solid and been great friends when I've been at my worst. And now I just need to hope that I can get back to my best and hopefully reward them in some way. But, you know, out of everything negative, there's always something positive, isn't there? So you can't go through your life dwelling on what did happen and what could have happened and have I missed my chance. Now it's all about how do I make it work going forward.
Yeah, well, it has happened, and you're back training in Newcastle and Sam Kavanagh 2.0. But as all this happened, I think people who are watching this podcast and seeing you sitting there, and we can see the lack of hair.
Yeah,
you got and you've
left
just,
his hat in the cab. He tells me,
and I think you've just come from your surgeon, your oncologist, and you've been jolted with a cancer diagnosis. It's stomach cancer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So
when did that happen?
When
did you get the diagnosis?
The diagnosis was July. I've just finished 8 weeks of chemo. I need an operation to basically, depending, but possibly take out my stomach, a gastrectomy. Look, I'm 37. My prognosis is positive because of my age and they've done a full body scan. They don't think it's spread. Well, at this stage, it hasn't metastasized. Yeah. So it's in my stomach and the top of my bottom of my esophagus. At the end of the day, the surgery is going to tell us everything. We cut the stable back to sort of 16, 17 in work, which Kelly's doing an amazing job with, and I'm sort of doing Gallop mornings. I've taken a step back. My owners
stable's going better actually.
My owners have been amazing. So I basically got rid of the horses that were stressing me out, the owners that were stressing me out, and the guys that are there have just been amazing. So if I turn my phone off and need to sleep, I'm bringing them back. Just as you were coming back, you got another battle to deal with. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of frustrating because, I mean, this was the first spring I actually thought I had proper horses lined up, and it hasn't quite worked out. Kobe bleeding the other day and Rathful having a break. It hasn't quite worked out. But, I mean, I've got a stable of basically 18 in work and probably 5 Sydney Saturday horses. So percentage-wise, it's great, but it's not really a living. You need to have 40 or 50 to survive. And we were at a stage where we really need to turn over. You need that many horses.
Well, and you look at, people don't realise that these big stables, the mega stables, some of them have upwards of 500-600 in work, you know.
All over the place.
If not more.
Yeah.
So
like, you know, going back to those slipper noms, the top 5 in Sydney have got over 100 nommed. You know, so, you know, if I've got 20 in work and they've got 110 yearlings coming through, like what chance have I had? So my problem is, like, my last 50 runners goes back to June, and
their last 50 runners
goes back to last week,
October 6th.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah. And I guess what happens is the problem becomes for us is how do you attract those owners? Because the person that is a lawyer in town that watches the races on a Saturday, is busy midweek, watches the races on a Saturday and loves having a bet. And he wants to stick 20 grand into a share in a 200 grand horse, right? Well, he sees Channel 7, where they talk about Annabelle, they talk about Kieran, they talk about Chris Waller, Gay, and
then a sprinkling of others. There's a bit of Beyond, there's a bit of Freedman, there's a bit of Joe Pride. But they're not talking they're talking about that's like situationally, you know, like these guys are getting interviewed every week. If there's a story, they're going to their stables.
I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that these are the guys that have got the runners every Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. It might only be 5% of their stable that's running in there, not 50% of the stable, like a smaller trainer. Like, I have these conversations often with Ed Cummings. Now, Ed's got 20 in work at Hawkesbury. He's got Duas win a Group 1. He had Straight Acer run second in the Silver Eagle the other day.
Yeah.
He won a stakes race with an extravagant filly.
Unbelievable.
At the championships. You know, really, he's done a bloody good job with not a lot of horses. He hasn't sold all his yearlings. He's trying to promote himself and so on and so forth. You know, we had a season last season where we sort of hit the goalpost. We ran 4th in the Ingham from barrier 18. We ran 4th in the provincial championships, hitting a heavy track. We ran 4th in the coast. You know, and, you know, we didn't quite hit the bar. Now, I don't have any yearlings for sale because I only bought 3 this year. But like I said, I've bought 3 and they've got 104. So my chances of getting the good horse, I need to really buy the horse, give it the time, and try and make the horse to be there. But if I'm there, if of those 3 horses, I get a Metro Saturday horse, percentages wise, I've done an amazing job. But you're going to see me at 5 Saturday meetings for the season, not every Saturday.
That's right.
There's no marketing like winning on a Saturday.
Yeah.
In racing.
Yeah.
Like
In racing,
it's not like normal business where you can stick your name up on it or an
On
advertising.
racing, you need to win. You need to get on the 7 coverage, the Sky Thoroughbred
right.
Central coverage. You need to be on the Big Sports Breakfast on Sunday with Ray Thomas or whatever, and
promote. And I'm not saying this is please. I'm not saying this is a negative on any of those big stables, because those guys could all train and they're in that situation because they're good trainers and they've built their businesses to that. I'm not being negative on them in any way. I'm saying it's hard to try and break through.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that probably most of my clients are coming through other clients. So it's friends of friends. I'll bring a friend in.
Yeah.
Then they have a personal contact with me. So a lot of my clients are the guys that want to ring on a Friday. Like I had a horse last Saturday, for example, that I thought could not get beaten. And I rang every person in the horse and said, look, I don't often do this, but you can have what you like on it. And they're like, really? I was like, yes, 100%. You can have what you like on it. You will win. Every one of them appreciated that. Now, they're not going to get that in a 100-horse stable. They're going to get an email on a Friday saying,
happened?
You're a nice chance. Oh, no, I bolted him. Yeah, no,
I was dying 1,000 deaths there. I thought, oh my God.
Yeah, no, he's a very good horse, and you know, I wouldn't have told the story if he got beat.
Yeah.
But my point is, you know, the people that want that point of contact with their trainer, want to be able to ring your race days, everything okay, we all good. They're the guys that go to the 20-horse stable, right?
Yes.
I get it. It's a different client.
It's a different client.
I get it. Yeah.
And I just need to try, and obviously it's a little bit harder now with my health and everything like that, which I really appreciate the guys that I do have, how respectful they've been.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I need to service them in a different way than what they would get at those other
And to be
places.
honest, the equivalent to it is Joe Pride. He'd probably be the big stable of what that was now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 60 in work though.
now,
full
but
time.
that's as big as you can get having that sort of personal.
And apart from that, it becomes
And I got to be
a
honest,
computer program.
I got to be honest though, 50's my number. I think 50 to 60 is where I'd love to get to. I've trained that many before when I was at Dad's, and that's a number that I felt that I knew every horse in the stable and what was happening with them, and I was comfortable with that. I've been in stables where it's 100+ horses, and it does become, if you don't have systems and make it robotic, it's it doesn't work.
Well, you know, you've got to be
and Kelly and I-
nominating 100 horses. Some of them are in a Kembla and some of them are in a Goulburn, and some can go to Canberra. Some can truck up to Doomben because there's a Class 3 over 1,630 metres. And you've got to have the system, the computer system in place that tells you that, because you simply will miss things.
Yeah, 100%. And you need you need more office staff to run that sort of stuff as well. Like a friend of mine works with Will, and when I got sick, which I really appreciate, he's been amazing, Andrew Northridge, he rang me up and said, send me through your codes. You're going to miss things and you're going to forget things. And he's helped me out since I was doing my treatment, just doing my noms and acceptances. And I tell you what happened, actually. I was driving to the trials, and I'd had a horse run on the Saturday and I had it in at Scone on the Monday, and I forgot to scratch it. And it was just when I got sick and I had everything going on, and Andrew rang me up and said, send me your codes. This can't happen.
Yeah.
And he's been amazing. But that was something that I was always totally all over. My race norms, where I was doing, because I was my own racing manager.
Yeah.
And then just when I got sick and I was starting to get a bit frazzled, that's when I started to I need a little bit of help, which he's been amazing with that.
Absolutely.
Well, Sam, your honesty today has blown us away. We want to thank you for your time. We wish you and Kelly and Sienna all the best over the next few months as you go through your battles. And who knows, you might jag one out of this year's sales. You might go and buy 3 or 4, and there could be an Everest winner, a Melbourne Cup winner, a TJ Smith. You just don't know what's there. Yeah,
look, like I said, it's just a moment in time. So we just got to get through the next 6 months. And look, like I said, hopefully that nice horse is there. I've got nice potential horses, and the black type teams helped me with buying some young horses. We've got a couple of nice fillies we bought, and I've got Rathful to come back, who I think's a really good horse. And we just got to hope that something turns up in the next 12 months. But the main thing is we get through December and get through the operation and move forward.
Look, thank you, mate. Thanks for being on the Art of Racing.
Cheers.